Okay. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Kalayim, Perek Daled Halacha Aleph. We're learning today Daf Lamed Vav. We are dedicating today's class L'Refuah Shalema of Rudi Rachamim ben Oreta Zahava. And we began this Perek by learning the opening Mishnah that spoke about Korachas HaKerem. As we explained, just to quickly review, that you already have a Kerem, and then someone cleared out the middle of the Kerem. When we say middle, it doesn't have to be mamish in the middle, but you cleared out the Kerem in a way, as the Gemara began to tell us, that Rabbi Yossi explains that you left on at least two sides of the clearing enough rows of vines that will comprise a halachic vineyard. And actually, the Gemara, to back up Rabbi Yossi, that's where we left off. The Gemara quoted the Braisa that spoke about the case of Korachas HaKerem. You have a Kerem, and you cleared out some middle part of the Kerem. And what do you have on its sides? So the words of the Braisa is V'neshtayir boy kedei Kerem bein ma'ar baruchos, even bein mishalosh ruchos, and even bein mishtayim. But how should the two be? This is key words, zu keneged zu. This is where we left off. Now we began, the Gemara on top of Daf Lamed Vav began to explain the first case of the Braisa, where you have V'neshtayir boy kedei Kerem ma'ar baruchos. And we learned, when we learned the last year, the top line of Daf Lamed Vav, by reading the words that we have printed inside, Chamei Shurin from 7:7. I know it's written Shoiva, right, from Sheva, not Sevilla, not a sin, but a shin. And we explained what that meant. We're going to restart Daf Lamed Vav on top of the Amid by reading a girsa that is also brought down on the Mara Fulda, that the Sheva Shurin from 7:7, and I'll explain why this girsa is easier, at least for me, to chap what the Braisa is emphasizing. So we're going to begin with that. We're going to have to quickly go back to, we'll do that when we are already in the middle of the Gemara. We're going to go back to the pictures that we had on Daf Lamed Hey Yomid Beis. For people with the art scroll, 35, actually Daf Lamed Hey Yomid Aleph, 35A2. In other words, not right now. But when we get into today's Gemara, we're going to first go back to really chazer properly the Shita of Beis Shammai that says that the Chumrah of Korachas HaKerem is that normally you only have to plant 4 amas away from the Kerem. And if it's 4 amas away, you're good. Here, you have to have a gap of at least 24 amas for you to be allowed to plant inside only 16 of them. Beis Shammai is a bit more lenient. You have to have a gap of at least 16 amas, in which you can only plant 8 of them. We're going to go back to that, to Chazrit, and then we're going to have the bulk of today's daf will be a machlokes amoraim between who the Yerushalmi calls Kahana, right? In the Bible we call him Rav Kahana, but Kahana and Rabbi Yechanan. But to understand the machlokes of Kahana and Rabbi Yechanan, we're going to have to go to Daf Mem Beis, and we're going to learn today the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis, and we're going to see how to link our Mishnah with the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis. Just to give you a quick heads up as an introduction, that the Mishnah there will be discussing the maximum possible distance between rows for them to still be connected. It's good to hear these words once. When you'll hear them again and again, you'll chap exactly what the Mishnah is speaking about. Rabbi Yechanan has a formula. I'll just say the words of his formula. V'chol hadvarim Beis Shammai moisifin shlish, a shlish milabar, as we'll show mamish how that works. And finally, we'll see how far we can get in Daf Lamed Hey Amid Beis, just to know that when you plant foreign seed near the Kerem with daladamis or less, so when you now create a problem, that's going to be something that we'll learn new today. You do not create a problem to the entire Kerem. Because don't forget, Yakir, I can have a Kerem that's a mile big. And if I planted apples If I planted a foreign seed within 4 amas, I'm not allowed to do that. But you can't say that the whole kerem becomes asur. What becomes asur? What becomes asur is that the minimum amount of rows that will constitute a kerem, that which will become wholly forbidden. But if you have many other rows, don't forget the foreign plant is not within daladamas of all of them. They're only within daladamas of the periphery, of the outermost row. According to Beis Hillel, one row does not create a kedem, generally. We'll learn exceptions to that. So if you need to have 2 rows, both rows will become kadosh, but only those 2 and not the other ones. Again, we're going to learn this inside, and we're going to learn today a lot of new dinim b'negei akilei hakedem. So, Chavra, we're going to start now on Daf Lamed Vav Amid Aleph, again, all the way on top of the Amid. The Gemara is explaining the words of the Braisa, which is explaining the case of Karachas HaKedem. You cleared out a space in the Kedem. And here I'm going to ask for Kevan to put Dafka, the picture, only the picture, that's all the way on bottom of the Amid. And for those of us who are using an art scroll, please go to page 36A1. We already learned Friday the diagram A, B, C, and D. We don't have to repeat that. That's simple. The challenge, just to speak out, is if you look at diagram, Kevin, you don't have to show it, but in diagram B, for people who have art scrolls, you'll see that he made 3 gaps because the Gemara speaks about 3 gaps. But the only gap that is relevant is the middle one. Why did the Gemara have to speak about 3 is difficult. We're going to learn another girsa, which you'll mamish understand why the Gemara speaks about 3 rows. It's not 3 gaps, it's 3 rows. Okay, so dafka that picture. That's good. Here we go. So hey Chavida, what will be the case where after you made a clearing in the vineyard, you have now surrounding the gap from all 4 sides vineyard. Lebesilo, a vineyard has to be comprised of at least 2 rows. From those 2 rows, one of the 2 have to have at least 3 vines. The picture that you're looking at, if you look at the center, right? So you have, according to the girsa that we're reading now, Sheva Shurin. It's okay, Kevin. Sheva Shurin min shoiva shoiva. Dafka 7. You'll see soon why 7. So we already explained why from left to right you have to have 7, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Because when you are clearing out, you're clearing out enough vines that themselves can be the minimum length of a row. That's what we're talking about. Not you clear it out 1 vine, which means you clear it out 3. So we're making over here that you cleared out C, D, and E. But we want to create a scenario where both to the right and to the left, you have at least 2 rows. So if you're clearing out 3 in the middle and you want to have on both sides, each one, 2 rows, you have to have at least 7. That's why when you made a clearing in the middle, if you take a look, you have to the left, AB is 2 rows, FG is 2 rows. To the top, now we're not gonna say that what you have on top of the clearing is a row of 7, because you don't, because the clearing itself is only 3 rows. What's adjacent on top of it is also only 3 rows, but that's enough, because 3 vines. You don't have to have 7 vines on top of the clearing on the top, because what's above the 3 of rows 3, 4, and 5 is only CDE. Gesundheit. CDE is 3 vines. 3 vines it makes a row. It's the minimum amount for a row. So you have on top two rows of a kedem, and you have on the bottom a kedem. That will be a case of karachas kedem that's surrounded ma'ar baruchos. Now, what did we just benefit right now? We just benefited. You didn't need to make a clearing of 3, 4, 5. You didn't need that. But what you do need, the Gemara speaks about 3 rows. So let's go. Sheva Shurin min shoiva shoiva. So now, Nasab Chad Karmen. Nasab Chad Karmen means that you remove from, we're going to go from 3, 4, 5, enough vines to comprise a row that's necessary to make a kedem. That's the meaning of Chad Karmen. That means you remove 3, which is C, D, and E, is Ki'isi, Arba Karmen, or Tulasa Binyanim. So now you'll have a scenario where you're going to have around the gap, like we just spoke out, you're going to have 4 halachic vineyards. And the meaning of the words Utulasa Beinayon is because you cleared out 3 rows. Even when you cleared out 3 rows, which are rows 3, 4, and 5, even though you did that, since you are beginning with 7 rows from top to bottom, you still have 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Now, what happens? What happens if you clear it out? You don't have pictures for it. You don't need it. You can keep the picture up, Kevin. If you clear it out, let's just say row 2. And on row 2, you clear it out again, C, D, and E. So AB is a kedem. FG is a kedem. 6 and 7 is a kedem. But if you cleared out rows 2, 3, 4, 5, what do you have on top? Only row 1. 1 row, Lebei Silo, even Lebei Shammai, 1 row. Well, Lebei Shammai, you can say that they have 5 because you really have 7. But you don't. 1 row is not good enough. So now you are only surrounded from 3 sides. And if you remove another series of 3 vines, is Taman Tolosakan and Talei Binyanim. Now, the Talei Binyanim for me is going to be a little bit difficult. I don't know what he means with 2. Why does he call it 2? Here it's going to be difficult. According to the Girsa we had before, which is diagram C, it works. And Nasav Chad Koiden is Taman Trei Karmin B'Chad Binyanim. And that will be the case of Zu Keneged Zu. So Chavra Atkan is what Rabbi Yossi is emphasizing, that the whole din of Karachas HaKerem, which has the Chumrah, even Lebei Hillel, certainly Lebei Shammai, that the Karachas has to be really very large for you to be allowed to plant in the middle of it. It's not enough for you to be 4 amas away from the Karamim, way more than that. That's only if you have at least two remaining kerems from Zu Keneged Zu. And I want you to know that according to many, this is not universally accepted. Actually, we're going to be learning Dinim today that from there we imply that there are other Tanoim that disagree with it. But that will not be more than these words. We don't have to say for today. Okay. Now, 2 things. First of all, Kevan, if you can go back to page 35A2, I simply want to quickly review the Mishnah that we had in the beginning of this Perek. All right, and both of the pictures on page 35A2 is of Karachas HaKerem, beginning with the Shita of Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says that you have to have the Esrim V'Arba Amos for you to be allowed to plant in the 16 in the middle, as you can see in the picture. So you have on the top and on the bottom are the 2 Karamim, Zu Keneged Zu. Of course, you have to. You can't plant. No. That's the wrong one. That's Mechayla Kerem. Again, 35A2. Okay, that's good. So you can see 4 amas away from the top. That's not a chiddush. 4 amas away that we are calling avodah. That means an area that you're living empty for you to be able to work with your oxen, with your implements, to be able to work the vines. That of course has to be empty. You would think that if there's anything more than that, in that little strip, you could plant. No, you can't. You need to have 16 amas. Why do we have to have 16 amas? So we explain that the way we are learning right now, that according to Beis Shammai, only an area of 8 amas is considered a distinct field. Being that you have a kedem in the top and the kedem in the bottom, we need for the farmable area to be theoretically even divided into 2, to a top and to a bottom. So it's going to be aligned with, it's going to mirror the top kedem and the bottom kedem. And even if you make it into 2, each one, according to Beis Shammai, has the minimum amount needed for it to be considered distinct, and that's 8. So you double 8, you have 16. And where could you plant in the 16? That means if you were, and that's so 4 and 16, and 4 is a total of 24. If you have 23, you can't plant anywhere. That is Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel holds, now go to the other picture, the same idea. The Chumrah of Karachas HaKerem is you can't just separate it 4 amas. According to Beis Hillel, 4 amas is enough for an area to be considered distinct. Beis Hillel, like Beis Shammai holds, you have to be able to double it. No, take that picture away. I don't know why you're putting that picture up. We're not talking about the wall. We're talking about Karachas HaKerem. Again, 35A2. Don't look at the picture right now. So you have, according to Beis Hillel, the farmable area can be half the amount. What's half of the amount? 8 amas. Same idea. The 8 amas is the top of the farmable area is looked at one area. The bottom of the 8 amas is looked like another area. Why do we need the farmable area to be, so to say, divided into 2? Because you are in middle now of a double vineyard. You have the top vineyard and you have the bottom vineyard. So we want for the middle area also to be, so to say, doubled over. Minimum each side, according to Beis Hillel, is 4. So that's a total of 8. So 4 and 8 and 4 is a total of 16 amos. That is the shita of Beis Hillel. Now, before we continue with the Gemara, now we have to go to Daf Mem Beis. Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph. Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph does not need any pictures. I simply want everyone to go now to Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph. The Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis, which is the same chapter, right? Pedig Dalit, but that's Halacha Vav, is speaking about the minimum. The maximum distance between rows that will still allow for rows to be considered connected one with the other. That's important. So says the Mishnah. I'm reading the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis. If a person plants 2 rows, according to Beis Hillel, to make a kedem, you have to have at least 2 rows. But they're very far apart. So says the Mishnah that im ein beineim shmoina amos. If you don't have between them 8 amos, that means if the space between the rows is a drop less than 8 amos, these 2 rows, yes, combine, and therefore you have now a halachic kedem. And once you have a halachic kedem lo yavi zera lisham, then you're not allowed to plant anything that's within the 4 amos, which is the din of a kedem. Meaning, chavre, that if the 2 rows were 8 amos or more, and therefore they do not combine, of course you have to plant something 6 tfachim away from the vines. Fine, 6 tfachim is 6 tfachim. But you don't have the din of 4 amos because you don't have a kedem. Says the Mishnah Vayter, if you have 3 rows of vines, im ein ben shura lechaverta sheish esrei amos. Oh, here again with Daf Lamed Vav, that 3 rows or more are considered unrelated when they are separated by 16 amos.
So what's the minimum again to be related?
It's 8 amos. So again, 8, in other words, now you have 3 rows. So in between, you have 2 in betweens. So the same logic that if you have less than 16 amos, in other words, you don't have 8, you have less than 8 in between each one. Then you have a kedem. Now, let's go that you have a minimum over here. I know the Mishnah speaks about 3, but it's a minimum of 3. Let's say you have 4. Yakir. So we are also looking over here. We are looking over here to see if this might become a korachas hakedem. But when a person plants 3 rows, we say that you want to use for the farmer, the whole area is called a kedem. Since for the farmer, the whole area is considered a kedem, if there is a large gap in between the rows, those gaps could become the din of korachas hakedem. You with me? So he says that im ein ben shura lechaverta sheish esrei ama. Gavaldik. Here we're saying that if you have 3 rows or more, if you have 3 rows or more, Yakir, you don't have to have the shear of 8 amos. It's not the 16, it's not the 8 times 2. If let's say you have 5 rows. If
5 rows are empty or they're
no, 5 rows. And let's say the space between the 1 and 2 on the top is under 8. Space between, the 4 and 5 is under 8. But the space between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, right? Here we're saying that if it's within 16 amos, wow, then it combines, which is really great.
What does it mean within 16 amos?
That means that if we can make a picture, if between rows 2 and 3, there is a drop less than 16 amos. So what would happen, Danny, if we said that you have to have under 8 between the rows? Well, it's more than 8. It's almost 16. So you would then say, row number 3 is not connected to the other 2 rows. right? But we don't say that. We say that we give a much larger share. That if you have a drop less than 16 amas, we connect 3 with those 2 rows.
What's the distance? What's the distance between 1 and 2?
It has to be under 8.
So the total distance is 24.
Don't look at the total distance. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. I think it's even more than that. I take it back. That once you're planting 3 rows or more, we say that if the rows have to be under 16 for them to be considered related. That's the Mishnah there. If you only have 2 rows, it has to be under 8 to be considered related. If it's 3 rows or more, says the Mishnah, all you need, then you have a much larger gap that's allowed for them still to be considered related. That's what the Mishnah. They are considered connected. And here again, now you have a kedem. Well, Yavizet al-Lasham within 4 amas. But if now it's 16 amas or more, now you got an issue. Now you don't have a kedem. And if you don't have a kedem, all you need to do is to put it away 6'5". Very good. Under, Kevan, even between 1 and 2, you can have under 16. No,
well, okay, I'll put less than 8 between 1 and 2 and less than 16 between 2 and 3.
Okay, that's fine. But I want to just make it clear that I take back what I said. Even if between 1 and 2, it's under 16, which is much more than 8, you're still good. What the Mishnah is saying on Daf Membe is that once you plant 3 rows or more, we tolerate a much larger distance for them still to be connected. Now, let's bring these 2 Mishnayos in together. Where did we hear about 16 amas? On the Mishnah that we just quoted, on Daf Lamed Hey. Right, that if you have a Karachas HaKerem, if you have 16 amas, then you can plant in the middle. So Beis Hillel is using a shear of 16 amas. Beis Shammai is using a shear of 24 amas. So comes along Kahana, we'll see Rabbi Yechanan argues, and he says that Kitchilas Matatoi Oisen Oisoi, that the Karachas HaKerem should follow the Mishnah on Daf Membeis, which is speaking about how the distance of rows, the max, that we still allow them to be connected. Meaning that even though the Mishnah on Daf Membeis only quoted Stam, the share of 16 amas, says Kahana, that Mishnah only follows Beis Hillel. According to Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel will be even more, he'll be even more machmir. He'll say that if it's under 24 amas, they're connected. Which is why in our Mishnah, when he speaks about Karachas HaKerem, v'churbanai esrim ba'arba, which is Gavaldik. In other words, the Mishnah and Daf Membeis only spoke about a share of 16 amas. That's because the Mishnah is only quoting, only following Beis Hillel, which is normal. Many times, Rebbe doesn't have to quote the sheet of Beis Shammai. And it fits. Just like over here, Karachas HaKerem, for it to be considered a distinct area, how many amas do you need, Kevan? You need to have 16, according to Beis Hillel.
16 and 24. Beis Shammai 16.
16. So that's why Beis Hillel says that if you're planting 3 rows or more, we allow for the rows to be related, right? As long as it's under 16. 16 is already a distinct area. But according to Beis Shammai, that he demands 24, he's going to say they're also 24. So holds Kahana. However, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, no. Beis Shammai are machmirin bechurbanah yosim imatati. The Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis is l'kula alma. However, in other words, to combine rows, they have to be within 16 amas. Where does Beis Shammai argue with Beis Hillel? Once you already have a kedem, and now you made a clearing in the middle of the kedem, and now you want to be able to plant foreign seeds in the middle of this karachas. Beis Shammai is machmer, and he says you have to have at least 24 amas. It's very important. So that's the machlok. Chilas matatoi l'kula alma. Even according to Beis Shammai, it's only v'chorbanoi where we have, this is kshitas Beis Shammai esrim ba'arba. Now, says Rabbi Yechanan, giving you a formula, daf lamed vav amid beis, guys, on top of the amid, that v'chol hadvarim, when it comes, v'chol hadvarim is not only our halacha. We're going to see how we could apply this to other halachas. The rule is Beis Shammai will be Moisev a shlish beyond the shita of Beis Hillel l'chumra. So let's go over here, guys. From 16 to 24, what is the percentage? I know that I'm going to use Talmudic words. A shlish milabar. A shlish milabar means after you added the addition will be a third of the total. What's a third of 24 then? 8. Very good. So here you go. We would call it milagav. It will be half. Beis Hillel says 16. Beis Shammai is saying, one way of saying it is take the share of Beis Hillel, divide it into half, and add that half. Or after you added whatever he'll add, whatever you added is a third of the total. So that's the rule, that v'chol hadvarim Beis Shammai are moisev shlish. And the Gemara now is going to challenge this v'chol. How can that be?
V'chol hadvarim means in what? In all scenarios?
In all scenarios where we have a machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai is moisev shlish. So in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis, what is Rabbi Yechanan saying then? The Mishnah says that once you plant 3 rows of war, the cutoff point is 16 ames. Let's go now. Let's go. The clearing, karachas hakerem. The karachas hakerem. You have to have 24 ames. Beis Hillel says 16 ames. So you see that Beis Shammai, when he's going l'chumra, he's going adding the shlit to the sheet of Beis Hillel.
Before you said Beis Hillel is 24 and Beis Shammai is 16. Is this what happened?
What was that?
Before you said Beis Hillel is. What am I confused about?
If I said that I made a mistake. Beis Hillel says 16. Beis Shammai said now. Beis Shammai says 24, and in the Mishnah Daf Mem Beis we only have the share of 16.
I'm confused. Isn't this what Rav Kahana said? He said that wherever the machlekes here is the same as machlekes there. Rav Yechanan said no, it's not the same machlekes, and now we're saying it is the same machlekes.
We're saying no. We're not saying that. We're saying that over here, Danny. Here in our Daf Lamed Hey, here Beis Shammai says 24. So Rabbi Yechanan is saying that he always adds. Not on Daf Mem Beis, but we'll see. Let's go to the next case in the Mishnah. What's the next case of our Mishnah? Where you have a machlokes with Yerushalmi by the wall, by Mechayil HaKerem. And what's the halach of Mechayil HaKerem? That Beis Hillel says, you have to have 12.
4.
You have to have 12. Yeah, but I'm saying a total of
4 and 4. Yeah, 12.
Because it's 4, 4, and 4. Beis Shammai, the way we're learning is consistent to saying 4, 8, and 4. That's 16. Now this already doesn't work. Why doesn't it work, Danny? Because if you take 12...
Yeah, it's only 25%. It's not a third.
The third milabad would be 18. Would have been 18 because you cut it in half. 12 and a half is 6. Add 6 to the 12, and you have 18. So that's the Gemara's kasha. How can you say v'chol hadvarim? V'chol hadvarim, very good, Danny. It doesn't go to the Mishnah Daf Mem Beis. It goes to other arguments. It says in the next case in the Mishnah Mechayil HaKerem al date de Beis Shammai, according to your formula, should have been Shmona Esrei. Since al date de Beis Hillel, it's only 12. Because when you add a third milabad on 12, you have 18. And v'hataninan, but we learned in our Mishnah, right on Daf Lamed Hey, Mechayil HaKerem, Beis Shammai says 16. Ubeis Hillel lemim shtei mesrei. That's a gavaldik kasha. So answers the Gemara. I'll tell you the answer. Is the boy a meimar? We can find we could answer it. And if you take a look on that 35a3, in the case of Mechayil HaKerem, that say mehem arba amas la'avoida, the 4 amas that you need beyond the kerem won't be included in this cheshbon. Anyways, you cannot plant in 4 amas from a kerem. So if you remove those 4 amas, how much additional space do you need for you to be able to plant in the middle? Now, according to Beis Shammai, 12. Right? According to Beis Hillel, 8. Going from 8 to 12 is a shlish. Don't add in the calculation, say mehen arba amas la'avoida. Now it comes out, now that if you can see the picture, what was the word of Beis Shammai?
What about the first case? When we went from the 16 to the 24.
Let's see if it works. Hold on.
No. Also include the work area?
You can't do that because here you have work areas on both sides.
Oh, so in that case, you include the work area. When it's only on one side, then we don't include it. All right.
Yeah, it's not. You're not. That's why it's only is by lamema. Same arba amas lavoida. Nimsu shtei mesrei al dati de beishama yishmoin al dati de beisilo. That's the Gemara's answer. All right.
Is it all right? I'm sorry.
What was that?
Nothing, Abba. I feel like my brain is getting toasted.
No.
No, it's good. It's like the gematrias when you add in the word and
No. It works.
It
Okay,
fits.
okay. Now, what we had until now was the Gemara making a correlation between our Mishnah Korachas Hakedem and the Mishnah Daf Mem Beis. Right? L'kahana, they are identical. Even though, in other words, the Beis Shammai argues there. Rabbi Yochanan, no. It's a correlation. Elamah. Beis Shammai only adds l'chumra, which is over here. He only adds over here. Now the Gemara is going to have a whole different approach. Benegea korachas hakerem, which is, look inside the Gemara Chevra, ba'avoidas hakerem, adata de Beis Shammai shmoina amas. Vadata de Beis Hillel will only be 4 ames. In other words, let's understand the Mishnah different. Take a look. Let's go back, Kevan, to Korachas Hakedem, to 35a2. And what will that be? We kept on saying that you have to have 4 amas outside the farmable area. Now the Gemara is saying another approach. That you need to have, according to Beis Shammai, 8 amas. In other words, when you have an area in between a kedem and the farmable area, maybe the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is that according to Beis Shammai, 4 amas, and you need 8 amas. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both agree that a area for it to be distinct is enough for it to be 4 amas. And you have to double that by what? By having by 8. So the middle area has to be 8. Well, how did Beis Shammai come to 24? Because according to Beis Shammai, whenever you want to plant something in middle of a vineyard, you don't have the normal 4 amma work area and you're good to go. There, the avoida has to be 8 ammas. So it's a whole different configuration than the one you're looking at the picture. It's not like when you have the 24, you can plant 16 of them. No, you cannot. You can only plant in 8 of them. And you need on top 8 ammas, and you need on the bottom 8 ammas. Because avoidas hakerem adate.
So 8 and 8.
8 and 8. That's what the Gemara is trying to say over here. Badata de Beis Hillel is arba ames, and that will be the way we'll explain the Mishnah over here. By Korachas Hakedem asks the Gemara, no, it's not going to work. Why will it not work? Because for Hataninan we're going to learn in the Mishnah Daf Mem, and there we're speaking about the original machlokes of how many rows are needed for you to have a kedem. You have to have for sure 5 vines. According to Beis Shammai, the 5 vines can be on 1 row. According to Beis Hillel, they have to be on 2 rows. And therefore, says the Mishnah, based on this argument, Hazareya arba amos sheba kerem. Since lebeis Shammai, a kerem could be comprised of even only 1 row. If a person planted within 4 amos, we don't take away that picture from a kerem. Like we spoke out in the words of introduction, what happens, David, if you plant within 4 amos of a kedem? I just want to add a very important thing, that the planting in itself doesn't make everything not kosher, asar bahana, but if you planted it and you left it there long enough for the kedem to grow an additional 1/200th, that's when everything becomes kadosh. The word kadosh here is in the negative, it becomes asar bahana. Just want to throw that out there, but we'll learn about that later. It's not that you planted and it's already Kilayaket. Now, okay, I planted it and I left it in there. One thing is for sure, if I have a kedem that has 100 rows, Don't tell me that if I planted a foreign plant within the Daladamis, the whole thing, the whole Kedem becomes Kodesh candy. You know what becomes Kodesh? The minimum amount of what is needed to create a Kedem. LeBeit Shammai, only one row. And therefore, Beit Shammai Yoimrim, that what? Since you only need to have one row, that if you planted something within for Amos from the outermost row, only that row became Kaddish. Kiddush Achas. Since LeBeis Hillel, to make a Kedem, you have to have a minimum of 2 rows, 5 vines, but they have to be spread out on 2 rows. Even if every row has 100 vines, you have to have 2 rows. So if I planted something within Daladamis from the outermost row, 2 rows become Kaddish. The Kedem becomes Kilei HaKedem. Beis Hillel Oimrim, Kiddush Tei Shurais. Okay. Now, l'chayra, if you're telling me right now, anu sfara.
Okay, but going back to Beis Hillel, for it to become Kaddish, what's the distance? 8 or 4?
No, 4 from the outermost one. That's what happened. If someone planted
You have 5 and then 4. You have a row of 5 according to
No,
Beis
you don't
Hillel.
have a row of 5. A row, according to Beis Hillel, it doesn't matter how many in the row here. Don't even speak about that because it's not necessary.
Okay.
According to Beis Shammai, 1 row, if there's enough, the number is 5. It doesn't. According to Beis Shammai, 1 row can make a kedem. According to Beis Hillel, you have to have at least 2 rows.
The answer.
Okay, now 1 second. You're trying to tell me that Beis Shammai holds that the avoida needed by a kedem is 8 amas. You're trying to tell me that. If that would be the case, then the whole Mishnah is when you planted Hazareya Arba Amay Shebakerem. And on Hazareya Arba Amay Shebakerem, you're telling me Beis Shammai says Kiddush Achas. Why would that? L'chayra Beis Shammai, it should be even more chamor that if you planted within 8 amas from the Kedem, Kiddush Achas. So doesn't that Mishnah imply that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are both on the same page, that all you need of avodah is 4 amas? So the Gemara says, Nishtazoi, that Neymar, the reason why the Mishnah gave an example of Hazarei Arba Amas Shebekeren was only begin Beis Hillel to Nisiya. But according to Beis Shammai and Achanami, the same Isser would happen if it would be within 8 amas. In other words, that's what they argued. That's what we're still standing our ground over here. Okay. Gemara is going to challenge it again. And now we're going to a Mishnah Daf Nun Gimel that Eza who Aris. Now let me tell you the din of an Aris. When you plant vines and you allow for the vines to grow on the ground, that is what we refer to as a kedem. Remember, these are big rules. Actually, what we are familiar with, we in Tafshin Pehei, when people here go to vineyards, whether here in Oxnard, whether they saw in Italy, we don't have vines growing on the ground. We have another type of plantation that's called an udis. The udis means a trellis. And what they would do is that either they would have a wall. I know it can be a lot more sophisticated. Today you have little, branches. But once the vines are no longer growing on the ground, that type of vineyard is not called a kedem. It's called a udis, which means a trellis vineyard. Okay? Now, and the chiddush of a trellis, it can be a wall. Yeah. The chiddush of a trellis, David, is that even LeBeis Hillel, only 1 row of 5 creates a din of a kedem. You made it more chashuv. 2 rows minimum is when it's growing on the ground. If it's an udis kedem, you have the same number of 5, but even if it's only in 1 row, that's going to be considered the kedem. And now there's a new machlokes. From where do you measure? And if you want to go quickly to Daf Nun Gimel and show a picture, there's a machlokes on Daf Nun Gimel. From where do you measure the 4 amas? And the number for the picture will be take a look on Daf 53b1. So what you have over here is you have the 5 circles going from top to bottom. That's the minimum amount. Very good. The picture to the left. That's the minimum amount of vines. And guys, even LeBeis Hillel, since it's an udis, even though they are only in 1 row, has a din of a kedem. The line is the wall over which you are trellising the vines. Now, you have to have 4 amas distance. From where do you count it? If you want to be lenient, you will count it. I'm sorry, if you want to, if I can't, it's a chumra leBeis Hillel. According to Beis Hillel, you're counting it from the wall. You're counting it only from the wall. So if you planted it within 4 amas from the wall, kilei akerem. According to Beis Shammai, you get to count it from the vine itself. According to Beis Shammai, according to the picture that we're learning, you will be allowed to plant in the shaded area. Okay, that's the mission that we're quoting. Clearly, if they are debating from where do you count the 4 amas, Beis Shammai holds you only need to have 4 amas. Let's read it inside. What is? And again, the machlokes, the words of the Mishnah is, I'm just reading the words. Beis Shammai yoimnim moeded 4 amas meikar gefan. Beis Hillel yoimnim min geder. But clearly, Beis Shammai says that it's 4 amas, not 8 amas. That lochayda is a checkmate. So the Gemara says, no, Shanyahi, no, not true. I'll explain to you why over there we can be more lenient. Turning to Daf Lamed Zayin, and you have to have the picture on Daf Lamed Zayin on 37a1. The Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Now Reb Shimon ben Lakish is coming to resolve another issue. We're going to get to that when we learn on Daf Nun Gimel. But what did he say? That the Mishnah on Daf Nun Gimel is speaking about Ba'aris Hama'ukem Shanu. Ba'aris Hama'ukem means there's only one wall over which you are trellising 5 vines. The picture is not that great. I think Kevin can draw a nicer picture. But I'll explain what you're looking at. When you planted the vines near the wall, the base of the vines are not aligned. Some of them are closer to the wall. Some of them are farther from the wall. I would argue, one might have argued, you don't even have one row. How is it a road? You see, the picture that he's showing is a road. You have a road. Here, that's called mu'ukam, that the vines themselves are crooked. And Alidei Akima, because of their crookedness, he made it in a way where 3 were adjacent the wall, and 2 of them are farther from the wall. One might have argued that Tarte misbalon, that 2 of them are absent. Now, I want to tell you like this. If 2 are absent, you know what the din would be? If you don't have 5, how much distance do you need? Only 6 tfachim. So the whole Mishnah on Daf Namun Gimel, to begin with, is a big chumrah. I mean, you would think it's not even a kerem. Mishnah is being mechadash, it is a kerem. We do consider them aligned. You know why they are considered aligned? Because they are equally trellised on the wall. The wall aligns them. But since over there, one might have thought it's not considered a kerem, Beis Shammai is at least lenient over there, that all you need to have for the avodah is 4 amas. There he'll agree with Beis Hillel. But whenever you don't have a kerem that's barely a kerem, because things are properly aligned, then the Gemara is suggesting that maybe the way to understand karachas kerem is by saying a chiddush, that leBeis Shammai, by every kerem, not only in a gap, by every kerem you need to have 8 amas, not 4 amas. And that's how you got to the 24, because it's 8 and 8, and the middle only has to be 8. So we had 2 different ways of understanding the din of karachas kerem. We'll stop over here. God willing, to be continued.
Rabbi.
Yes.
According to this way that we've been learning, what's the reason for it? Is it because they don't like this whole idea of needing 16 in the middle, so therefore this is a better way to understand it?
I think
it seems like such a deichik to do this 8 amas of space when all along it's been talking 4, 4, 4 everywhere. Like, how does this make our life easier in understanding Beis Shammai?
It's not about easier. It's like a machlokes, and what's the rationale behind Beis Shammai, and therefore what's the size of the farmable area? I don't think it's about easier. In other words, we are going with the premise that you only need to have a 4 amas on each side. Beis Shammai, therefore you end up with 16 areas you can farm on the 16 amas. We're saying a big thing. You cannot, Beis Shammai, you cannot farm on the 16 amas. It's not about making it better. It's pashut understanding the din of karachas hakerem. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, but according to this understanding, it spreads into all these other cases. Whereas
to this understanding, it's going to be a
the first way of learning it,
that
it's really
according
just
to Meshama,
karachas.
and it's everything. Whenever we learn 4 amas away from a kenim, it's only Lebei Silim. And the only exception will be the Mishnah of the crooked others. All right.